Welcome everybody. My name is Jos Bergman and I'm working for Technology2Enjoy as a PeopleSoft consultant. And today I would like to give you a demo about PeopleSoft Supplier Scorecarding. What is PeopleSoft Supplier Scorecarding? With PeopleSoft Supplier Scorecarding, you can measure the performance of your suppliers that your company is doing business with. You can set up questionnaires, evaluations, which can be filled out by your users to provide supplier ratings. You can give the questions in an evaluation a certain weight to determine the scores, and you can also set up KPIs to calculate a score based on a query looking at the procurement data. For example, the percentage of products arriving late. With Fluid Analytics, you can review and analyze the supplier performance results. In the live demo, we're going to review the setup of evaluation questions and templates. We're going to create an evaluation and fill it out as a user. And we're going to review the evaluation scores. Let's log into my PeopleSoft demo environment to start with the demo. And we're going to open up the tab Procurement Operations, and then going to the tile Supplier Scorecard. And within this tile, you have a selection of other tiles such as Manage Evaluations, Evaluation Questions, Evaluation Templates. To create an evaluation, and you got yourself here also two fluid analytic tiles, which are using a pivot grid to show you the data in a chart. And we have a scorecard administration tile, which is a navigation collection with links to the setup pages. Let's first dive into the setup a little bit by opening up the scorecard administration tile. The first thing we have to set up for the supplier scorecard functionality is to define the templates. It's basically what we start with. The templates this enables you to categorize your evaluation forms. And for example, we have a couple of templates here that are relating to commodities, services, training. And in that way, you can categorize your templates, your evaluation forms. Another thing is the section type setup. An evaluation might have different sections, such as a section relating to financial questions, a section relating to the invoicing, or a section relating to questions about the quality, or generic questions or questions regarding customer service. To ask what users think of the customer service of a supplier, if they're happy or not. So with sections, you can categorize your questions into sections as well, which we will see later on when we open up an evaluation form. We can see how that all works and how what it all looks like. Then we also have the question groups set up, where we can also group our questions into groups. For example, questions, evaluation questions regarding customer service, which is basically the same principle as the section type setup. Questions regarding the overall questions, or questions about quality and pricing, etc. And we can also set up KPIs and also categorize them into categories. For example, KPIs, key performance indicators, that are relating to customer service or delivery or invoicing, etc. And we can also define KPIs. For example, KPIs are a objective way of measuring a supplier performance because it looks at the data in the system, which is an objective score, and questions that are asked to a user are subjective because they are the answer of a user. They are the, it's a question that is asked or that is answered by a user, whether a user is happy or not, which is a subjective question. A subjective answer. But KPIs give a objective answer because it's based on data from a table. So that would be an objective answer. And questions answered by a user would be subjective. Let's open a KPI to see an example what it looks like. Let's see here. Let me just hit clear. So in demo, we have a couple of KPIs that we can view as an example on what it looks like. For example, let's take a look at the on-time delivery system KPI. And this particular KPI is created to measure whether as we can see here, this KPI is derived from procurement historic data. It is a calculated percentage of the shipments for a supplier that were received on their scheduled date within the evaluation period. So this KPI calculates a percentage, seeing if the products are delivered on time, the shipments. And basically, when you create a KPI, you can you have to link it to a query, which you can create your own queries in PeopleSoft, and you link it to a query, and that query has SQL, and in this case, let me open it up here. So this particular query that is used for this KPI has this SQL statement, and we can see here that the SQL statement calculates a percentage, a score, based on the quantity that is early and the quantity that is late, and then it calculates a score based on this information here. And it looks at the history tables for the procurement data, and it also looks at the reporting entity and the evaluation period in which the score is being calculated, the evaluation period. So KPIs are a great way of getting objective answers, objective scores, and users are giving subjective scores because users give an answer based on their own feeling of whether they're happy or not with their supplier. That's really a subjective feeling, but KPIs are giving an objective view of because it's based on data. So this is how a KPI looks like. And you can also categorize it with a category. And here you can also create KPIs that are based on a query, but you can also create a KPI that is based on a manual score that you manually key in. So let's return back to the scorecard administration page. So we have seen, we have looked at how KPI definitions look like. You can also, within the administration, the setup, you can also select your detailed calendars here, but also importantly, your scoring model, models. For example, these are questions that are these are answers that a user can choose. For example, from disagree to agree. If I click on this one, then you can see here that the user has the option to select answers such as strongly agree, which is an 80%, which is 100%, scoring value, whether he is neutral, a 60% scoring value, or whether he disagrees, which would be a 40% scoring value. And this is basically how the scores are being determined and calculated, which is a scoring model. And so that is in a nutshell, very briefly, the scorecard administration, the setup that is required to make use of supplier scorecarding. Now let's go back to the dashboard here, and let's let's take a look at the evaluation questions, because two things are really necessary. You need to have a template and you need to have questions. So let's open up the questions here. And these are the evaluation questions which appear on your questionnaire. And let's take a look at, let me open up a bit more questions here. And for example, as you can see here, we have subjective questions. The question type is subjective. Those are questions that are answered by a user. And you also have objective questions that are answered by a calculated score from a KPI. Let's open up a particular question. For example, this question here. This is a question about warranty issues, and you can categorize it into a question group. It's a subjective question for a user to answer, and you can also make it available or not available. So that is what questions look like, and these questions are linked to a template. On the left side, you have your question groups. You can also categorize your questions into question groups, and you have your question type. For example, these are the subjective questions, and these are the KPI questions. And these are the KPI questions. So if I click on, for example, what percentage of the quantities received from the supplier were acceptable, blah, blah, blah. If I open up that one, we can see here that this particular question is answered by a score from a KPI. And we can also drill back to the KPI definition and see the query that is behind it, and also the SQL that is behind the query. So let's go back to the setup here, to the dashboard. So we looked at the questions. Now let's take a look at the evaluation templates. So these are the evaluation templates. So let's open up a particular one. Let me open up all of them. And these are, we have 9 templates here. So let's take a look at the commodities template here, version 2. Let's open up that one. And this evaluation template has, as you can see, 4 sections. And each section contains questions. So we can see here that this particular section, which is called delivery performance, has a scoring model of disagree to agree, and within the template, this section is 30% of the 30% of the section weight, and the other sections have their own section weight as well. As you can see here, 20% of the overall score, and which totals up to 100%. We can see here that the owner, we can see it's available, this template, and we can also, for example, if we have new questions, then we can create ourselves a new template by clicking on a new version, and that creates yourself a new template, because this template is already used in evaluations that have been filled out by users, so you cannot change this template anymore. So if you want to create new questions, then you start with a new evaluation template by creating a new version. Let's open up this particular section, delivery performance, by clicking on the arrow button here. And then we can see the template section here with all the questions here. This one has 6 questions. And we can see here, the question products are delivered in the correct quantities, which is a subjective question. So that is actually answered by user, and that is has a section weight of 16% within this particular section, and within the entire evaluate, because an evaluation form can have multiple sections. So within the entire evaluation, it is a 5% overall weight score. The weight is 5% within the entire evaluation. Here you see the scoring model values, which is the rating that is given for it. For example, strongly agree is 100% and neutral is 60, etc. You can also give instructions that the user can read on how to answer a question, certain instructions that will help the user understand what he is answering to. You can also make comments required, so that the user has to fill out a comment. And here we see the KPI question. This question is not answered by the user. It is answered by the KPI based on a query that calculates a score. So that's an objective answer, a KPI. Let's close this and let's go back to the dashboard again. So currently we have discussed the setup, the evaluation questions, and the evaluation templates. Let me just go back briefly to the evaluation templates because I think I've forgotten something to say here. Let me go in here. Oh, this is what I forgot to say. Within the evaluation template, you can also open up, if we go in here, let's see, no, this is all fine. Within the evaluation template, you can also open up the button View Details, and that opens up the the entire evaluation template in one page, so that you can view the template on one page from the top to the bottom. Here you can see the template with all the sections, section 1 and section 2, and you see all the questions that are part of it, and the total weight and the weight and whether comments are required. You see all the sections. You see the scoring model here. So it basically is an overview of your template on one page, giving you an overview. So now let's go back to the dashboard again. So again, we have discussed the setup, evaluation questions, evaluation templates, and now let's create an evaluation and then invite a user to fill it out. So for that, we're going to open up the Create Evaluation tile, and we're going to create a new evaluation. We can also copy it from an existing one, but in this example, we're going to create a new one. And let me call it Live Demo, or you know what, Supplier Satisfaction. And let me select the set ID. So we're going to create an evaluation to rate a supplier, and the supplier that we're going to rate, that we're going to ask a rating for, let's see here, let me see, open up, which is this one, Mitten Computer Supplies. We're going to create an evaluation for to rate its performance. Search this one and then continue. And here we see the evaluation being opened up here. So we have our evaluation name, we have the supplier that we want to rate, that we want to create a performance review for, the supplier. We have the owner, which is myself. I'm logged in as VP1. We can give the evaluation a due date. We can give it a planned release date. We can also allow the evaluation to be declined so that the user can decline it if he doesn't want to fill it out. And we're going to also give an evaluation period. In this case, I'm going to use a ad hoc period. So I'm going to do it for an entire year, well, 1.5 years, from 2018 until the end of last month, June. And then we're going to go to next. And here we're going to associate the evaluation to a template which contains the questions. And we're going to take commodities template number 2. And here we can click on the details, which gives us the template details with all the sections and the questions that you can still review here. And we can also click on the preview button, which shows us the evaluation form that the user will see. This is what the user will see. So you see all the questions, the sections with the questions, and the radio buttons with the answers that he can give and the comments that he can fill out. So let me just select commodities template 2, click on done. And now the template has been copied into the evaluation, and here we see all the sections, and we see the scoring models, we see the questions here, etc., etc. And of course the section weight, the section weight and the evaluation weight, as you can see here. Let's go to next. And here we can actually invite the users that we would like them to fill out, who we would like to fill out the evaluation. Hit add evaluators. So let me just ask, let's just send this evaluation to the user Calvin Roth. So Calvin will get a notification to fill out, he will be invited to fill out an evaluation for this supplier. And he has access to all the sections. So he can fill out the questions for all the sections here because everything is selected. And let's go to, you can also, when you add your evaluators, you can also search on the user ID or the name, but you can also select a particular role and, for example, the accounting managers, and that will return all the users that are part of that particular role, and then you can select all the users, so that all the users of this particular role will get the evaluation, the invitation for it. The invitation to fill out the evaluation, which is a notification that they get in their notification bar in PeopleSoft when they log in. They see the notification on the right upper side appearing. So let's hit cancel here. In this particular example, I'm just going to send it out to one evaluator. Let's hit next. And this is the last step where we can actually review the evaluation that we just created for the user. We can review it here. And once we're happy with, when we're happy with this, we can release. Again, also here you have the option to open up the evaluator view. So this is basically what the user sees. This is the evaluation form that the user actually sees with the radio buttons. And in this case, we're happy with the questions, so let's release it. Yes. And now the evaluation has been released. It appears under the tile Manage Evaluations. We are the owner of this evaluation that we just sent out to a user to fill it out. We are the owner, and we can review our evaluations here that we have released to the users. We can open it here, and here we can see how much responses we have received. In this case, no one has, Calvin hasn't returned it yet, so it's responses received is 0. We have our due date, which we can also change. And once we receive the surveys coming back, then an overall score will be calculated here based on the service we receive back from the users. Here we have the evaluator, the date that we have sent the evaluation to him, the status, whether it's been filled out or not, and we can also remind evaluators to fill it out, and we can also remove them and also add new ones here, evaluators. So let's log into the user Calvin Roth and fill out the evaluation. So I'm going to go to this session here, and let's log in as Calvin Roth. And as you can see here, there's a notification appearing here in the right upper side. There's a notification, which this red balloon that you see, and which informs us that we have to if I click on it, the system basically says that we have been asked to complete an evaluation. You can either open it through here, or as a user you can also go to the procurement operation tile or procurement operations dashboard, and then open up the My Evaluation tile, and then you can also open it through here as a user. So we have received an evaluation to fill out, and let's open it. And we can decline it or we can continue with it. We see the evaluation name, we see for which supplier it is, and we see the ID and the period and the due date. Let's hit continue. And now as a user, I can basically rate this particular supplier by answering the questions. These are we only see the subjective questions here. The subjective questions we only see here. The objective questions, the KPIs, are dealt with later. We will deal with them later once we have filled it out, because that's what the owner of the template is doing. So let's, as a user, we're going to answer all these subjective questions. So let's say, let's see here, products are delivered in the correct quantities. Well, I'm happy with this, strongly agree. And let me just, for the sake of the score, give different answers so that we have a different, that we have a good score, but just with different answers. Let's create some differences here. And then here we have to do some comments here. And then here as well. And then let's also answer this: strongly agree, agree, and neutral. And here outstanding, acceptable. And here strongly agree, neutral, and disagree. Comments required. Put it in here. And we can also give an overall comment here. Now, once we're happy with this, we can submit it. And now the response has been submitted. So now let's go back to the owner of this template, the administrator. So in this session, I'm logged in as the administrator. And let's refresh the page here. And let's open up the Manage Evaluation tile again. And then let's open up the evaluation that we send out. And we can see here that we had sent out one survey. Well, we had sent out a survey to one user, and he has returned it. So so basically everything has been sent back. We see a chart here. It's submitted. We only had one. So, and the system also calculates an overall score here based on the surveys that we have received back. For example, let's say that Calvin had filled it out incorrectly, then we can also remove the evaluation from the scores by hitting the omit button, and we can also view his responses by opening up the evaluation here, we see the data that he has filled out. And we can see the scores that are being calculated here. So this particular section about the delivery performance, based on the answers given, the section score is 70%, and the section weighted scores 21 out of 30, and that accumulates with all the section scores, accumulates into an overall score. So now we have to calculate the KPIs. These are the subjective scores. Now we have to create the KPI scores based on the data in the system. So let's open up on the left side, let's open up the sidebar, and then we're going to click Apply KPI Values. And then here we can calculate the KPIs. And these are the KPIs that are based on a query, and this is a manual KPI where we'll manually key in a score. So let's start with the first one. And we are now logged in as the administrator. And we as an administrator will review it, apply the KPI values, and then also release the scores so that we can view it in the Fluid Analytics. So the administrator will finish off and complete the evaluation and all the results. So let's apply the KPI. This is a KPI about delivery performance, and it calculates if the scheduled quantities for the shipments were received in time. So let's hit, and this is based on a query in the system that we viewed in the beginning of the demo. Let's hit the Apply KPI button, and then it calculates the score. So in this case, 74% based on the data in the system. 74% of the products were received were received on time. 74% was received on time. It's done. Let's open up the second KPI. And the second KPI here, we can also drill down to the KPI to see the SQL statement behind it. That's also possible. And we can also, this particular KPI is about the on-time delivery percentage for the supplier. So let's hit the Apply KPI, and it calculates a score of 27%. So this is not a really good score. So 27% of the delivery was on time, which is not a very good score, I imagine. But let's click Done and continue. And now let's open up the third KPI here, and let's also calculate that one, 98%. And then also the last one is a manual KPI, and that talks about what was the average response time in hours from the supplier when contacted during the evaluation period. So this is the customer service of the supplier. Let's say the average, and this is a manual KPI that we can manually key in. So let's say we have understood from, for example, let's say we have a CRM system or any other, let's say the users told us that it takes about 3 hours to come back to them, for them to come back to us, for the supplier to come back to us. Let's say it takes 3 hours. So let's manually key it in, and then it also calculates a final score based on that. So it's also possible to create manual KPIs with manually keyed in data, but you can also create KPIs with queried data, basically a query that selects the data and calculates a score. Hit Done. And so now we have finished off the KPIs. And now we can manage, and let's see here, this is all completed, yeah. And now we can manage and post the results. So this is the overview, of all the results that are being calculated, all the scores, the subjective questions, the KPI scores, etc. We can see all the scores here. Products are delivered in the correct quantities, 100% score. The percentage of scheduled quantities that were received in the correct quantity, 74% of the scheduled quantities were received in the correct quantity, 74%, etc. Delivery of products are on time and are within the agreed time window. So this is a subjective score from the users, 80%, etc. We can also see here the on-time delivery percentage. 27% of the products were delivered on time, which is a bit low, and etc. etc. And here you see the section, the weight of the score within the section, uh, and the weight of the score within the evaluation. So this particular question has a weight within the section of 16%, but this question within the entire evaluation is 5% of the weight. So the score is 5% of the weight. So within the entire evaluations, the weight is 5%. So 5%. And we can also see if we click the responses received here, you can see the evaluators, the users that have sent them back to us, the date that we received it back, submitted. I can see here the date that we received it back, I believe, and we see the score and the weighted score. We can also click on it here, and then we see the individual scores from this particular user. And we can also close this one here. We can see the scoring model here, which is used here. Strongly agree is 100% scoring value, agree is 80%. So I'm actually happy with this. So as an administrator, I can post these results by clicking on the post button and click on OK. And now the evaluation has been posted successfully. So now it's available to be viewed in the analytics tiles. And let's go back to the dashboard. So let me click on the home button, and let's go back to procurement operations, supplier scorecarding, and then let's see here. Let's open up the, we have two analytic tiles here. Let's open up the overall scorecard tile, overall score trend. And then here we can see the analytics for this particular, basically the scores of the evaluations that were sent out. We see here, we have a chart here. We have a, let me just put it on this one. So here we see the period end date, which is the evaluation period, the end date, and we see each color represents a vendor. So for example, the 30th of June this year is basically relating to the supplier Mitten Computer Supplies, which we have rated with an evaluation, and we can see that the score was 75%, which is the overall score for this supplier, which is below the threshold, because we have set up a threshold with a minimal acceptable score, and the threshold we have here. If we click on the set, this button here, we can set the threshold options here. And currently the threshold is set up with a lower limit of 82% and a higher limit of 85%. So this is the threshold, and we can also be alerted. For example, we can receive an email or a push notification or both. So once a supplier is going below the limit of 82%, we can be notified by mail, push, or both notifications. And we have to set up a recurrence in PeopleSoft so that the system will trigger the responses depending on your recurrence, every day or every hour or daily or weekly, and then you will be notified by the system once a supplier hits below the lower limit of 82%. You can also change this to a distinct if you want to have, just 80% and not a range. We can also do that. Let's say it on 80, put it on 80% here, and then we see here. Now we have there's a like a purple bar here, which has the description minimal acceptable score, and that's also possible either a range or a distinct as a threshold. So let's look at the evaluation that we have sent out for the supplier that we have rated, Mitten Computer Supplies, which is this one here. So let's click on the bar and let's click on detailed view. And then that way it only returns the evaluation ID for this particular vendor, for this particular supplier. And we see the evaluation ID, we see the name, the supplier ID, the name of the supplier, the template ID, the version, and also the period start and end date of the evaluation period. And we also see the score here, the overall score, which is 75%. So from here, we can actually drill down by clicking on the action button. We can actually drill down to the section score trend, or to the oh wait, 1 second there, to the view evaluation details. So let's click on that one, and that opens up the evaluation details, basically showing us the questions and the scores for every question here, which is gives us more detail to see the breakdown of all the scores by question. So let's close this again. And we can also, on the left side here, we can also we have on the left side of the chart, we have our filters and prompts. We can change the start date here to see a bit more data here. From 2018 until end of June, hit search, and then it returns more data. Now we have a lot more data to select from, and you see you're on the y-axis we see the score, and on the x-axis we see the period end date, and then on the right side we see the legend with all the colors corresponding to the suppliers. And then here we can also, on the filter and prompts, we can click on the more options button, and we can also search for a particular supplier ID, and also click on the operators, for example, enlist or contains. Let's say if you don't know the exact supplier ID, you can do a contains or equal to or enlist or not enlist. So that's also possible to do it here. We can also decide, I only want to see the evaluation scores for the Mitten for this particular supplier. So click on that one. Now we only see the scores of the supplier Mitten Computer Supplies, and we can see here that the overall scores over, from beginning of 2018 until last month, June. And we can also filter on period end date, and we can also filter on the commodities template. We can filter on the template, in this case commodities or other types of templates. And for example, let's say as a user that we want to have a different y-axis or x-axis, we can also play around with it. Let me remove this that particular filter here. So let's say currently we have on the on the x-axis we have the period end date and the supplier. Let's say that we want to do it by template. So I can drag the template filter to the x-axis here and drop it in there, and that will rebuild the pivot grid in the background. So now what you see is now it's the x-axis now went from period end date to template. So now we are looking at the template, and you see here that for the commodities template, we have scores of these 3 suppliers. The blue bar is for the supplier Big Comp USA with a score of 80%. The orange one for Medline medical supply 66%, etc. So you can also rebuild your pivot grid here by using different filters, or different x-axis, a different field for the x-axis. We can also move the supplier here, and basically what we then see is we see all our suppliers on the x-axis, and then you see as a series, you see the commodity templates. Sorry, you see the templates on the right side. So now we have a supplier on the x-axis, and as part of the series, we have it's sorted by template. So now we see all these templates here, and every template has a different color. So now we can also filter by template based on suppliers. And let's say that as a user, you want to see it in this particular order. What you can do is, as a user, you can save this as a personalization. Let's see here. You can save it as a personalization here. Before I go into that, you can also, I just want to mention, you can also update your filters here. You can delete and add filters if you want to, which is all part of this is all part of the analytic functionality within PeopleSoft. This is called simplified analytics, and this is part of it, and it shows you how to use the analytics as what users can do with simplified analytics is what it's called. So you have as a user, you have the option to add and delete filters. You can open up the chart options here. You can select a different x-axis, as a different filter for an x-axis here. You can, if you allow multiple y-axis, you can also select a different y-axis if you want to. You can also select a series that goes along with that. You can make the type of the chart 3D or a different type of chart view, the way you want to see the chart. You can put the legend on the right if you want to, and you can also put in your own title and subtitle and footers here as well. You can also export the data to Excel. You can set your threshold options, what we saw. And let's, in this case, save this particular view that we created of the chart. Let's save this. So we've personalized this chart because we want to have supplier and template on the x-axis. That's the way we want it. This is our own personalized view. So we can save that as with a particular name. So let's say we give it the name, supplier template view, and we can also put that in here. Supplier scores by template, by templates, for example. So let's hit OK. And now this particular personalization of the chart, this personalized view of the chart has now been saved. And let's go out of it for a moment. Let's just leave the chart and let's go back in again. So now let's go back in. And what we can do, this is the chart as it was delivered. Let's say the administrator has created this chart, and this is the original state it was delivered in by the administrator. But the user can now open up its own version of the chart is on personalized view, and he can go to the options menu and then open up the saved views, and he can open up his he can open, oh, whatever, I had another view as well. Let me just delete this view here. And then he can open up the view that we just saved and created. So open it up, and then it will load the personalized view of this chart that we chose, because now we have the, as you can see here, we have the supplier on the x-axis, as you can see. And you can also save this. You can reset it back to the original state by resetting your personalizations, or you can also save this. So let's save this layout, and now the layout is saved. So every time we open the chart, it opens up this in this particular personalization. If I now go back, yeah, it loads the personalization here, if I'm correctly. Oh wait, no, I did something wrong here. Yeah, no, this original way, and then open up the. Let me see here. Open up our saved view. Scores by template. Yeah, and then we can also save this, and then the next time we open it, it opens up in that particular layout as well. If I save this like this, now it's saved, and the next time we open it, it will open up in this way. So that's also possible to do. So you can play around with saving your own personalization here as well. And you can also reset all your personalizations back to the original state by just removing your personalizations here. So as a user, you can play around with this chart. This is called simplified analytics within PeopleSoft, and it enables users to personalize their own pivot grids and charts. And that basically concludes this this demo about supplier scorecarding.